You know that feeling you get when you hear a spooky story? That little shiver down your spine? We all love it. But what if those campfire tales, those urban legends, weren't just stories? Let's find out.
Right, that's the big question we're diving into. We are going to peel back the layers of some of the most famous urban legends out there to find the shocking and sometimes really tragic truth that started it all. Okay, so our first stop is Tasmania, of all places, for a story that sounds like it's ripped straight out of a horror movie, a classic haunted house tale. So the story goes like this. A family moves into a new house, and one by one, they start losing their minds. The whole town was whispering about ghosts, seeing things, just pure paranormal chaos. It was the perfect local ghost story. But here's the thing. When people finally looked into it, the horror inside that house wasn't supernatural at all. Nope, it was something way more real. Something the family was actually consuming every single day.
Get this. It turns out a plant called datura, which has the charming nickname Devil's Trumpet, was growing right over their house. Its leaves contain a really powerful hallucinogen, and they were falling into the family's water tank. They were literally being slowly poisoned, microdosing a hallucinogen that made them delirious. So to the outside world, it looked like they were going insane. No ghosts, just botany.
Sometimes, though, the monster in the story isn't a plant or a ghost. Sometimes it's a person. And these next stories explore how real-life boogeymen can become the stuff of legend. So picture this. It's Staten Island in the 1970s. Parents are warning their kids about Cropsy. He was the local boogeyman, this terrifying figure with a hook for a hand and a scarred-up face who would snatch kids if they wandered too far into the woods. A total classic scary story. Well, the hook and the scars? Total fiction. But the child snatcher part? Oh, that was terrifyingly real. His name was Andre Rand, a man who actually worked at a local school for children with disabilities. And the fear in the community wasn't just paranoia. For decades, Andre Rand was a real active threat, and kids were disappearing. His presence just cast this long, dark shadow. The Legend of Cropsy became a way for people to put a face on that constant, nameless dread. To personify a danger that was just too real to comprehend. Now for a story that honestly starts out sounding kind of like a joke. Over in the northwest of England, teenagers would talk about this character they called Purple Aki, a massive bodybuilder who had this really strange compulsion to go up to young men and just ask to feel their biceps. But the real story is incredibly dark. Akinwale Robike was a real person, and his bizarre harassment was relentless. His actions led to widespread fear, tons of arrests, and in one absolutely tragic case, his pursuit of a 16-year-old boy led to the boy's accidental death. The funny-sounding legend was actually masking a persistent and really dangerous reality. So not all legends are about monsters. Some are about these figures who are more like ghosts, just living on the absolute fringes of society. Imagine this. For nearly 30 years, people who owned cabins in North Pond, Maine, would show up and find things missing. We're talking food, propane tanks, books, stolen by a phantom thief who never, ever left a trace. They called him the North Pond Hermit. And the scale of this was just astounding. Over 1,000 break-ins. The Hermit became this local boogeyman, a story you tell around the campfire. Who was this phantom raiding their cabins year after year after year? The truth was almost unbelievable. In 2013, the police finally arrested a man named Christopher Knight. He had walked into the woods back in 1986 when he was just 20 years old and lived there in total isolation for 27 years, surviving completely on what he stole. In nearly 3 decades, he had spoken only one word, hi, to another human being. And a really similar, strange story of isolation played out in Switzerland. For over a decade, people reported seeing this silent figure walking the same path in the woods every single day, always wearing a gas mask, a boiler suit, and a cloak. They called him Loyon, the ghost of moles. But when a photo of Loyon was published in 2013, the mystery turned into a spectacle. And soon after, his clothes were found with this note. He, or maybe she, said the unwanted attention had forced them to abandon their happiness therapy, their daily walks. They were never seen again. All right, for our last one, let's look at a perfect example of how one tiny little seed of truth can grow into this massive, thorny legend. The legend of the Bunny Man is an absolute horror classic in Virginia. The story is that an escaped patient from an asylum, dressed in a bunny costume and armed with an axe, attacks people near a bridge that's now famously known as Bunny Man Bridge. But just look at the reality. The whole story comes from a real police report from 1970. A man in light-colored clothing, not a bunny suit, yelled at a couple for trespassing and threw a hatchet at their car. That's it. That's the whole incident. And from that one bizarre event, this entire horror mythology was born. The story just completely took over. The legend is now a tourist attraction, it's a movie franchise, it's a brand. It's the perfect example of how our collective imagination can take a small, weird truth and just blow it up into something much bigger, scarier, and, let's be honest, way more exciting than what actually happened. So, what does all this tell us? What's the common thread here, running through a poisoned family, real-life predators, silent hermits, and an angry guy with a hatchet?
These stories resonate with us, they stick around, because they aren't just pulled from thin air. They're echoes of real events. They kind of serve a purpose for us. They act as cautionary tales, they give a name to our anxieties, and they give us a narrative for all the strange, tragic, or frightening things that just defy an easy explanation. And that really leaves us with one final thought. The process that created the Bunny Man and Cropsy, it's still happening, right now. So you have to wonder, what strange events, what anxieties, what real-life figures from our own time are being woven into the campfire stories we'll all be telling in the future?